All right, so this is kind of a trial run. I figured I might as well at least try to jump on this YouTube bandwagon. Maybe as things just roll off my head, because there sure is a lot of stuff that rattles around in there. I can start to think about what to talk about, kind of the goals I have for this, and then walk past people that have lawnmowers running while I'm trying to record. It's kind of rude. Anyway, I've been doing these daily walks. The step thing never used to be a big thing for me, but now that we have a coach and it's kind of put in the plan, I'm one of those kind of people, if something gets put into a plan, I'm going to do it. I'll still make changes now and then, but some of the things I stay adamant about. Plus, I really love walking anyways. So, this time of the year, everybody should be walking. And don't give me that, I work a lot of hours, I just want to sit at home and watch TV and have dinner. You know, that's one of the biggest reasons why people get overweight, out of shape, blood pressure's high, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I would suggest as soon as you get done with your dinner and evening chores when you get home, whatever it is, whatever kind of plans that you usually do, taking care of your kids. Don't let having kids be a reason that you don't go on a walk either. I know sometimes there's different reasons, things that get in the way, but if you probably really thought about it, and I mean really sat down and thought about it, there's most likely not a time of day where you couldn't get in 2,000-3,000 steps at a time. And that adds up. If you can do it a couple times a day, you know, walking around the house, walking around the yard, all that kind of stuff too, those all count. So I would make sure you're wearing whatever kind of device you like that can count your steps for you. Get those 10 to 15,000 steps in a day. That's bare minimum. Another thing that the walks do for me is just like really help me decompress my brain. I don't know about you guys, but I'm one of those kind of people that if my wife asks me, what are you thinking about? And the time that it took her to ask me that question, my brain's already moved on to probably 5 different things. That's something I've always had going on as a kid. Some of us, I think, are just wired that way, and we got to learn how to channel that stuff. For me, it was easy for me to channel that stuff into anything that had to do with getting big, getting strong, anything to do with athleticism. You know, as a poor kid growing up, broken home, that kind of stuff, you go through those formative years, especially as a young boy, you got a lot of energy and things like that. It can be hard for a single mom to handle, and that usually gets played out in bad behavior in school. Of course, it doesn't help when you went to 9 different schools by the time you were 12 years old. I know there's a common saying, every time you pick up and move to another area, it sets you back a grade or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but if that was the case, I guess I have the mentality of a 15-year-old. But anyway, like I was saying, when I found certain things that could help me to release my energy besides getting into trouble, it was, at that time, running. It was free. What little boy doesn't love to run? And I discovered I was pretty fast. And sometimes I had to be fast so I could run from the bullies that were trying to bully me, for lack of a better, safer term. I'm going to try and keep these videos as PG-13 as I can, but I'm just that kind of guy that sometimes I'm going to go rated R if the mood catches me right. So anyways, I think the first thing that kind of triggered me from just wanting to be fast and athletic and doing good on field days at the end of the year for school was I remember my mom let me stay up and watch Rocky. I was probably about 8 years old, and it was like probably till 1 o'clock in the morning I stayed up watching this thing. And it was ever since then, watching Rocky work out was the biggest thing that caught my eye, because I could see him developing muscles, and then of course you correlate that with he's going to fight. Those are the two things that drew me, is knowing how to fight, protect yourself. I mean, I know that's not what Rocky was necessarily about, but that's how I thought of it. And then doing the workouts, the push-ups, the sit-ups, having people hit you in the stomach. And yeah, I did all that. And then fast forward a couple years, and then I remember it come across the TV one time, and we never had cable growing up, so we had to deal with the antenna situation. For any of you young kids that don't know what that is, just Google it. But if the reception come in good enough, you could catch stuff worth watching sometimes, and a wrestling show was on. And I remember it was Superstar Billy Graham. And I just remember thinking to myself, I want to be that big. As well as all the other wrestlers. And back then, wrestlers weren't even as buff as they were in the 80s and 90s, when you started seeing guys like Hercules Hernandez, Ultimate Warrior, the Road Warriors, Rick Rude, all those kind of guys. And then I remember going into Kmart, you would see the plastic covered cement weights, the dumbbell curl bars and the bench press and all that kind of stuff. I just remember myself wanting that so bad. But there was times where I would actually make stuff that I could work out with. Sticks with cinder blocks on them, heavy sticks out of the woods, and just mimic things that I seen in the movies that I saw. No set programs or nothing like that. Until I think I turned 13 years old, and I come home from staying over at a relative's house or something, and my mom and stepdad took me down into the basement, showed me what my birthday present was, and they had bought the weight set it up in this little room down in the basement where we used to live in Port Huron, and a little gym mat on the floor that had all the different types of body weight exercises you could do, like push-ups, sit-ups, all that kind of stuff. And literally that was the best present I had ever gotten as a kid. And I remember my stepdad write me a program, which I didn't know what that was, but it was just, typical program. Do some bench press, curls, do the barbell squat, put it on the back of your back, and didn't know nothing about form. There weren't no videos to watch, none of that kind of stuff back then. But I remember being as faithful as I could to that. Of course, didn't know that eating was a huge priority when you're trying to get big. And being poor, we really didn't have access to a lot of that stuff. But it didn't bother me a lot because I didn't know any better. So I just knew I wanted to get big. And fast forward a couple more years, and I remember going through a video store and seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger's Pumping Iron. We used to go and rent videos like every Friday night, rent a VCR too, and go home. And I remember I probably watched that thing 12 times since we had it for the weekend. And still had the weight set. I probably was about 15 at this time, 14 maybe. And I just remember seeing Lou Ferrigno and Arnold and Franco and all those old school guys. And again, it just kind of triggered me. And then gyms started popping up. Of course, you know, not being old enough and definitely not having enough money. That was a far cry from ever seeing inside one of those. So, but when I got my first bodybuilding magazine, which I remember my aunt had me do a favor for her, and she gave me a couple bucks. And I rode my bike down to the gas station and bought my first ever copy of Muscle and Fitness. And seeing all how you're supposed to eat, drink milk. I mean, we're talking, this was probably 1987 or something. And workout programs and seeing how big some of those people are. Now, I didn't know anything about steroids. I just knew, again, I wanted to be that big. So I would copy some of the workouts that were in that magazine. And I remember going into the 8th grade and then into my freshman year, working out as best I could in the summertime. And I'd gotten a little bit of a growth spurt. And a little bit stronger. I started to develop my strength. I started discovering that I was naturally strong for my size. And I went from, in the 7th grade, I was about 80 pounds. I remember probably that's the first time I ever remember weighing myself. And I might have been 5 foot tall. Like I said, I was a runt. And by the time I was a freshman, I was about 120, 125 pounds. Had a little bit of a physique. You could tell I'd been working out, which changed things for me in school a little bit. But then, once I got to high school and got in the 9th grade and everything, I realized they had a class called weight training. I thought to myself, damn, I can actually have a class. I hated school, hated everything about it. The only thing I ever cared about was gym class. But I thought to myself, I can literally have a class, they're gonna give me a grade and teach me how to work out. Which was the best thing that ever happened to me while I was in school. So as soon as 10th grade come, the very first thing I enrolled in, because you could pick your schedule, was that weight training class. And Coach Rep, Greg Rep, Port Huron High School. He was the coach back then. And he was built like a bodybuilder. Not as big, but I mean, he was pretty jacked. I would say he was probably late 40s, early 50s when I first met him. Good dude. And he took us through all the different types of programming and actually put us through a powerlifting mock competition at the end of the year. And I loved every part of working out. Couldn't wait till I got to that class. Again, I didn't know anything about nutrition, although we started learning some of that stuff when we were in that class. But being poor, didn't have access. We had, you know, we really didn't eat breakfast much anymore. If it was a hot cereal. But by the time you got in high school, you really didn't think about that. We always had free lunch going through school, which was humiliating, having to put up with that. But I remember using it, and they had the salad bar, and I ate the salad bar every day and loaded that plate up as much as you could. Because I had some understanding now that you needed food to be stronger, and that's all I cared about. So I did pretty good in the 10th grade, put on some good size. I think by the time I finished the 10th grade, I was right around 150 pounds. And I was bench pressing, I think I was bench pressing 205 by the time I finished the 10th grade. At 150 pounds, you know.